lived in Chicago until I was 4 years old, and we moved back to the West Coast, and that's where I grew up. My dad was the town photographer. He did still photography, and he was an amateur filmmaker. So he gave me my first cameras when I was a little kid, movie camera and still camera, and taught me how to use them. So that was kind of fun, and that's I suppose where my background in film began. Actually, I left Ontario and started school at UCLA, and I studied motion pictures and art history, and then I left UCLA and moved to New York City, and started a career as an illustrator and designer, and eventually became a fine arts painter. I don't know, I didn't really know, even though I'd went to film school, I didn't know how to go about raising millions of dollars to make a motion picture, so I pursued a career in the arts. But I met a guy named Abel Ferrara, who's now a well-known film director. He's mostly known for King of New York, I think, and The Bad Lieutenant, and some offbeat films like that. And we made a little film together. It was actually Abel's first feature film, and it was a low-budget film, and so I saw that, hey, you can make a feature film for as little as $100,000. So I dreamt up my first idea to make a movie. It was a kid's movie called Solar Babies, and I wrote a 30-page treatment with illustrations for Solar Babies. And after 10 years living in New York City, I packed up my bags and moved back to the West Coast. And didn't know how, but I was made up my mind I was going to get Solar Babies made. Well, by some good fortune, I met, first I met a guy named Waylon Green, who was a legendary screenwriter. He wrote the Wild Bunch and War Games and a bunch of stuff like that. He read my treatment with the drawings, and while he was reading it, a kid named Mark Johnson called him up and said, "Listen, I'm producing movies for Jerry Weintraub now, and do you know of any projects?" And Waylon said, "Well, I just happened to be reading this thing called Solar Babies," and so Waylon gave Mark the Solar Babies treatment, and next thing you know, I was running around with Mark selling Solar Babies, and we actually sold it based on a 12-minute slide presentation. A little time went by, and I put together a computerized slide presentation of actors on location with soundtrack music and stuff. And we sold the thing by some miracle to Mel Brooks, and Mark, of course, went on to become, a major producer in his town. Won the Academy Award for producing Rain Man, and produced all of Barry Levinson's movies. And but Solar Babies got made. It was made a little differently than the vision I had in mind. After that, I just made up my mind I was going to get more movies made, and I started writing for a long time. Life after Solar Babies, yeah. I wrote a lot. My background was primarily as a fine arts painter, so I had to learn to become a screenwriter because that's what I decided to do. Like most people, I thought I could whip out a screenplay, but I learned that there's really a lot involved in writing a good story. So, but I pursued that diligently, and I still do to this day. Writing, yeah, writing. It all starts with the writing, doesn't it? And this writer gets up very early every morning and writes 365 days a year. I wrote for a long time with the idea that I could get another movie made based on one of my screenplays, and that movie would then become a big hit, which would then allow me to direct, the next movie that I wrote. That was my plan for a very long time. And when I saw that plan was taking too long, I decided, I've got to make a movie. And it was about the same time that mini DV technology was coming out. So I decided to make my first feature film. And we shot Dark Spiral with professional actors and who all working in film and TV. And by some miracle, I was able to get them committed to the film. Actually, they worked for free because they liked the script a lot. Plus, we worked during a 10-day period during Christmas hiatus. So we shot this thing like mad in 10 days, and boy, that was a lot of work. And then we got that thing finished in the can, and it was pretty interesting, but not good enough for a distribution. A few more years went by. I wrote a lot more, and decided to make another low-budget mini DV feature, and called Little Eden. We got that made, and there were a lot of. It was mostly a lot of experimenting with special effects and motion graphics in that one, and now, gosh, a lot of exciting things going on. We've got projects, various stages of development all over town, and we're getting ready to make some great movies soon.
All right. Well, that sounds very promising.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.